During this call, the defendant stated that after he left the house that night, she killed the kids because she heard a voice and had, quote, a moment of psychosis, end quote. He asked her what voices she heard, and she said she heard a man's voice telling her to kill the kids and kill herself because it was her last chance. Patrick Clancy told the police the defendant had never heard voices before. He also told the police the defendant had never used the word psychosis to him before.
In January of 2023, Patrick Clancy returned home from a quick errand to find his wife severely injured and his 3 children unconscious in their basement. All 3 young children later died, sparking a tragic murder case that has captured national attention. Prosecution here is expected to play that heartbreaking 911 call that Patrick made during the trial. And the public hasn't heard that call yet, but in earlier hearings, the prosecution described what would be on it.
When EMS arrived, he asked them to stay with her so he could go find his kids. The 911 call kept going. Patrick can be heard on the 911 call entering the home and heading to the basement. At one point, he calls out, "Guys." He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes. Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, which is to the left when you walk down the stairs, while Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office, which is to the right when you go down the stairs. Each child still had the exercise band that was used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them.
Let's bring back in with us forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. And Dr. Carole Lieberman, let me follow up with you. We tried to talk about it in the last block, so let's talk about it now. This gender breakdown. What do you think that means for a case like this?
It's not as easy as one might think. In other words, the first idea that you might have is that, oh, well, more women is good because they would be able to understand her. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes there is sort of a backlash from women, particularly if it's a woman who had children and she didn't have postpartum psychosis, or there can be various things in the women's own experience that would make them unconsciously at least, turn against her. So it's not cut and dry. You really have to know more about each of them.
And Dr. Lieberman, I'm going to follow up with you and talk about what we just listened to. Patrick Clancy, not only the father of the 3 young victims in this case, but also the then husband of the defendant. He's in a particularly difficult position. He is no doubt going to be called as a witness, but can you talk about how conflicting this can be, especially when we understand from reports, from statements he's made, that he doesn't necessarily support the prosecution of Lindsay Clancy, that he forgives her and hopes that she can find peace?
Right. He is very much on her side. He does forgive her. I mean, of course, that must have been incredibly horrible to discover your children, especially with the bands around their necks still and all of that. And that's going to be very emotional for the prosecution. That's going to be very effective with the jury. But, she was a nurse, a maternity nurse. She loved her children. I'm sure there are going to be lots of witnesses who will talk about how much she loved her children and all that. This is an illness. This is a mental illness. This is a known mental illness. Postpartum psychosis, and the fact that she was having hallucinations, telling her to kill her children so that she could kill herself because she wouldn't want to leave them alone without her, being there to be their mother. I mean, it's all very believable, credible. The people who should be on the defense, sitting with the defense, should also be the doctors who totally missed the case.
Talk about the details and issues that are going to be front and center in this case. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carole Lieberman with us. Dr. Lieberman, let's start here. Help the viewers out. What is the difference between postpartum depression, which they may have heard about more often, but in this case, postpartum psychosis?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a woman shouldn't have to lock herself in a room or go away in her car to prevent herself from killing her children. What that speaks to, a woman who has postpartum often depression, because the risk there is killing themselves, or even certainly postpartum psychosis, the treatment is clear. It is putting them in a psychiatric hospital, medicating them, giving them psychotherapy, and sometimes it can take months to treat this illness. I mean, it can be very, very severe. A lot of it, of course, it has to do with hormones in the body. That's the whole, that's why you get it postpartum and so on. And the problem with this case is that she tried to get help. She went to the hospital. She called helplines. She went to emergency room. She did everything possible that a woman could do, and yet she still didn't get the right treatment. And the difference is postpartum depression. The overwhelming thing is the depression and the ideas of killing yourself. And sometimes there can be a little violence in there, but it's primarily if there are voices, if there are hallucinations, delusions, psychotic thinking. That is postpartum psychosis, and that is clearly what she had. Now they're going to try to say that the prosecutors are trying to say that she wasn't psychotic because she planned it, because she asked her husband to leave to get something to eat and to go to the pharmacy. That kind of planning, that is not very extensive kind of planning, and it certainly does not mean that during the time that she killed them that she was psychotic.
Let me let Dr. Lieberman get in here, because I can tell she wants to react to perhaps what are some misconceptions that perhaps even these potential jurors have about postpartum issues?
Yes, there is confusion about that, or it isn't really clear enough in the public. But there's another factor that has to be taken into consideration. She was put on a drugstore full of drugs, medications that interact with each other, that have side effects, that could cause her to be more psychotic. That is a very important thing, and to also take into consideration. In other words, it's not just plain postpartum psychosis. It's postpartum psychosis with the intervention of all these different medications that are acting against each other.
Dr. Lieberman, those details, jurors may be so enraged hearing them that they don't care about what diagnosis was going on, especially perhaps when they see some of the evidence we anticipate the prosecution is going to show, that she felt that her children wouldn't be able to survive without her. So she wanted to take her own life, but wanted to end their life so that they wouldn't live without her.
Right. Well, that's why I think actually the idea of the fact that she apparently tried to kill herself in a number of ways. She was really determined to kill herself. There were marks on her wrists and on her neck. But so that is a very important factor. If it was just that she wanted to kill them, she wanted to be rid of them, she had 3 children in a relatively short amount of time, that might come up as, part of it for the prosecution. Some reason for why she might do it, but she certainly wouldn't have jumped out the window or tried to kill herself in any way. That really shows that she believed the voices, the command hallucinations. I mean, that's proof of it.
Yeah, it absolutely could be. We will see how things go. These are difficult issues to talk about. If any of our viewers are struggling with something like that, remember 988 is that number that is recommended to contact for help.
I question whether she would ever make it to a trial. She's suicidal. She's extremely emotional. However, she's unable and has been unable to express any happiness or sadness or cry.
Now, this was definitely a different time, Carole Lieberman, because this was 3 years ago. Lindsay Clancy was still in a medical facility. You saw her there on the Zoom where she's watching this arraignment, and her defense is trying to keep her out of jail. But now, 3 years later, what do you think has changed for Lindsay?
Her medical condition has presumably gotten a little better, although apparently she still needs to be in a wheelchair. But as far as, with postpartum psychosis, it's not going to last indefinitely. I mean, first of all, one would hope that she would eventually, or has gotten by now perhaps, the treatment that she needed. Yes, should she be put into, assuming that she's been being found not guilty, or not responsible, yes, she should go to a psychiatric hospital, and yes, she should get more treatment. But in terms of the long run, this is not somebody who's going to be a danger to others, and it would be hard for her to be a danger to herself, though of course she could be. I mean, just because she's in a wheelchair now, it doesn't mean that she could never be able to arrange to kill herself in some way. But that's why it all goes back to the fact that she needs a lengthy hospitalization.
A lengthy hospitalization may be what happens. Dr. Carole Lieberman, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us on this sensitive topic. We hope we'll see you again during this trial.